Hi, this is Bill Hader.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Bill Hader.
Hello and welcome back to We Heart Hater. I am Deej, Big Vivi Barons.
And I'm your co-host, Casey Little Vivi Killingsworth. This year, going into our second year doing We Heart Hater, we're going to try something a little bit different here. At the end of our last episode, we didn't do any plugs for what we were going to be doing next because we hadn't figured that out yet by the time we recorded that episode, and we were running along and figured out a plan for year 2 of We Heart Hater. This year, we're just going to alternate between reviewing season 33 of SNL and seasons 1 and 2 of Documentary Now. And we are reviewing all of season 33 of SNL because we came to the conclusion of, well, it was a strike-shortened season, so why not review the whole thing?
We'll only be covering the first 2 seasons of Documentary Now. Not that the other seasons of 3 or 4 aren't great. It's just that, unfortunately, that's when Bill started with Barry, so because of his contract with HBO, he couldn't act on any other series. The other 2 seasons of Documentary Now are still very much worth watching. In particular, season 3 episode Cast Recording, based on the Cast Recording documentary for Company. As a Broadway nerd, that definitely appeals to me. On to season 1 of Documentary Now.
Okay, so the basic premise of Documentary Now is that it's a PBS-type news magazine-style program hosted by Helen Mirren. Yes, the real Dame Helen Mirren as herself.
In this clip from the 92Y panel on Documentary Now, they explain how they got Helen Mirren to do the introductions.
I was walking down a hallway at an event with her, and she said, if you see Fred, tell him how much I like Portlandia. And I said, we actually have a new show. Can we ask you to do something on it? She said, sure. And she was on Broadway, so she used her one Monday off in season 1 to come.
We're like, you have no jokes.
No jokes.
No jokes.
You told her this only works
straight
if you do it the way you would actually do a show that was real. And she immediately got it.
And this program is celebrating its 50th season. They're going back in the archives and presenting the most classic and well-known documentary films in history. As of this recording, only 4 seasons of Documentary Now have been produced. Season 1 premiered on IFC August 20th, 2015. It ran through the late summer, early fall of that year. Season 2, 2016. Season 3, spring of 2019. And Season 4 uploaded to AMC Plus on November 20th, 2022. All 4 seasons can be viewed on Netflix as well.
One thing I should mention about Netflix, I did find out, is it is available on Netflix, but if you have the subscription with commercials, it's blocked.
That's odd.
These are locked for licensing restrictions.
Deej and I differ slightly on how to describe the show's approach to what it does. It's not quite documentary. I would call it more mockumentary because what they're doing is parodies or loving comedic tributes to very specific, well-known documentaries from real life, with Bill Hader and Fred Armisen playing their versions of the main roles as they are the series stars. Various details, bits of subject matter change for comedic effect, but Deej disagrees with that categorization.
Because they're not mocking the documentaries. They're very respectful of the originals. So we'll be covering later The Thin Blue Line. They're very technical in that they want to make sure that they use sort of the right cameras, the right atmosphere of how the originals were filmed. And in a later episode in the first season called The Eye Doesn't Lie, they got the lenses that were used in the original Thin Blue Line documentary. More of an homage what the original is, but we do definitely agree on it just put its own little particular spin on it.
And as I realized just before we started this recording, calling it a mockumentary would imply that it's loosely improv or just scenes created from a predetermined premise, whereas, again, these are very faithful recreations of things that are not improv and are very tightly scripted. Bill and Fred are the stars, as well as creators and executive producers, along with Seth Meyers. The series was directed by Alex Buono, Rhys Thomas, who were dedicated to the authenticity, ensuring the look and feel match the source material. There is an SNL connection. Alex Buono was a cinematographer at SNL from 1999 to 2016. Rhys Thomas was a film unit producer from 2005 to 2017 and directed many of the various pre-tapes of the modern era. And he worked with Bill again in 2018, directing the first ever Pringles Super Bowl commercial, which I only have the most vague memories of.
The concept behind that was if you take this flavor Pringle and this flavor Pringle and another flavor Pringle, you get a different flavor.
Deej is going to tell us about the origins of this series, how it was conceived.
It was inspired with the brilliant pre-tape of the history of punk. Ian Rubbish and the Bizarros, they were a hardcore punk band. For some reason, Ian Rubbish had a particular affinity for Margaret Thatcher. Eventually, and that is revealed that is just because she reminds him of his mum. It was at the after party Bill had mentioned to Seth.
At the party that night, Bill said that we should do a show like this. And that was really, it was that
Yeah,
simple.
I said it to you at the party, and then I came in Monday, and I was like, I was serious about that. I want to, and then...
Because historically, things said at an SNL after party aren't taken.
I love you! we should write together next week. Like, I wasn't fucking around. Usually I fuck around when I talk to you, Seth, but...
Fred had the connection through IFC, through his series Portlandia. After the last episode was done, they brought the pitch to IFC, and then, as haters always said, then they started throwing money at us. And this is really only a thing that IFC, that it could be on, is IFC, really, when you think about it, because it's just, not only do a show that's very specific about one city, we're recreating well-known documentaries. This is also in a period of time that's sort of called peak TV, all these really specialized series. And it's been said by both Seth and Bill that without peak TV, this show couldn't exist. I, for one, am very glad it is.
First episode of Documentary Now is a parody of a well-known documentary called Grey Gardens. In case you're unfamiliar, per Wikipedia, Grey Gardens is a film that depicts the everyday lives of two reclusive upper-class women, a mother and daughter both named Edith Beale, who were the aunt and first cousin, respectively, of former U.S. First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, living in poverty at Grey Gardens, a derelict mansion in the wealthy Georgia Capond neighborhood of East Hampton, New York. The Documentary Now version is called Sandy Passage. The IMDb description of this episode, it's 1975. Larry and Alfred Fine, played by Rob Benedict and James Thomas Gilbert, are making a documentary on the Van Kiptons. Mother Big Vivi, played by Fred, and daughter Little Vivi, played by Bill, who live in a derelict old house. The house is in such a state they have been ordered to clean it by the city council. Also starring Cole Hockenberry as Barry, Cy Richardson as David. Grey Gardens, by the way, directed by Albert and David Maisels. Seth Meyers has been quoted as saying, "But I think if you've seen Grey Gardens, you might enjoy Sandy Passage more than people who haven't. But I also would hope that maybe someone out there will see Sandy Passage and it will make them want to see Grey Gardens' Circle of Life." And my personal anecdote from the time that Sandy Passage premiered on IFC was I saw that first, and then I was visiting my mom shortly after and saw that she was watching Grey Gardens on TV because as she was describing it to me, it suddenly popped into my head that I had just seen Bill Hader and Fred Armisen do something exactly like this on their new show on IFC. I asked my mom if she wanted to see it, and she said sure, because this Grey Gardens thing is depressing, and we watched it and laughed, and we liked it so much we just went ahead and watched the next two. And even after we watched the drones one, we actually watched an actual Vice documentary on Afghanistan. Just the drones episode of Documentary Now did have the effect on me and my mom that Seth Meyers hoped that Sandy Passage and Grey Gardens would have.
There's a promotional picture of Fred and Bill as the Vivs. There's a comparison that the Bill side of the picture looks like Harry Styles from One Direction. One thing Bill did mention in an interview about his daughters seeing that on a billboard, and they're a little confused.
So let's just get into recapping and reviewing this episode itself. Immediately, the first shot we see, we open on Big Vivi denying to Little Vivi that she's feeding a returning raccoon, and then we get this narration from Little Vivi saying they harass us because they don't agree with our politics, sending the police to tell us the house isn't up to code and the health violations, but it's just harassment. That's all it is. So they're literally being threatened with eviction if they don't move voluntarily or clean up the house and get it up to code. So then we first see Little Vivi wearing a very distinct outfit that I'm going to let Deej describe.
Yes. So it's like a brown skirt that's safety pinned on. I'm not sure why it's like that for a skirt, but apparently she can also use it as a cape. Now, in the original documentary, Little Edie wore a lot of headscarf. You very rarely saw her own hair. So it's a pair of sweatpants on his head, and then with the legs going across as a scarf. This is one of the great things about Bill in his performances is he completely melds himself into the role, because as is a constant concept behind comedy is you can't play the joke, you have to play the emotion. I'm a little jealous because Bill has better legs than I do.
I definitely agree with Deej's take on that, because that was my same takeaway from this, and I want to speak a little bit later about how Bill melds into this character when we get to one specific moment in the second act. For now, I'll say the outfits that Little Vivi has is, faithful to the original, and also, if you're unfamiliar and seeing this first, it lends a very charming, lo-fi, low-budget, ramshackle charm. It's just a testament to the sheer power of Bill's acting and character work to put this over.
And the sweatpants was actually Bill's idea as well.
Right. So, and then we start to see one of a few different sequences where Little Viv shows these old-timey photographs and paintings and drawings of Big Viv. Those are nice visual touch that lend an air of just moldy old played out aristocracy, not realizing that their moment in the sun has passed. It's a nice visual touch. I gotta chuckle out of Little Vivi describing Big Vivi's public toplessness incident that led to the police sketch that Little Viv was showing.
The police sketch and the caricature were probably the more ridiculous things about the whole thing.
Then the next scene is Little Viv walks up to the attic to show the filmmakers the stage where she learned to dance, and suddenly, without warning, she falls through the attic floor onto a small kitchen table where Big Vivi is arguing that,
What did you do? What happened?
I fell through the floor again.
It's because you stopped.
I don't stop.
I'm always telling you. You got floor all in my lima beans.
"You got floor in my lima beans." That's the first big comedic high point of this. That line from Fred, and Fred has a lot of great one-liners in this that easily outshine most of what he did on SNL. But that line from Fred stands out because I think I've watched enough IFC in general around this time period to notice that line was being used in a lot of promos for just general promos for the show. So that got repeated ad nauseum at some point.
Now, this is a very important scene, in as we were mentioning before how tight the scripted show is. This is the one thing that was added in at the last minute. When Bill proposed it, the director and the crew was like, how exactly am I supposed to do this? What they do, Bill fakes falling, and then there are stagehands below that blow up the dirt. They cut. That gives them a chance to film the Fine Brother going downstairs with Bill on the table in a very much very concussed state of being. And apparently there are a number of takes where he's really laying it on pretty thick. But just the way she acts with, I think, with the head injury, it's like, yeah, she is definitely damaged for some reason. Probably for several damages of falling through the floor before. So it's nice that a little bit of quick inspiration adds such a fun thing to the show. But everything else is as the script, word for word, and nothing changed.
That's Act 1, and we fade into the next act. The Vivs are just in the same bedroom. Little Vivi just casually notices a dead rat. It's so sad. And at this point, we see Barry, their current grocery delivery boy.
Not Barry Berkman, just Barry.
They don't know what they do without him. Little Vivi believes it's a bit awkward because she thinks he wants to have sex with her. Then she starts talking about how all the many suitors she had, Big Vivi chased away, including Stephen St. Regis, who Big Vivi says invited her to a dinner where she blacked out because she took the wrong prescription. Another pretty good Fred moment here. Another one-liner that's great. A prescription never calls for a handful of pills. That's what it was.
Yeah. There will be spoilers towards the end. When we do get to the final scenes, we'll issue a spoiler warning then in case you don't want to hear it. This is starting to set up some photo albums where she's going to show more pictures of St. Regis, and she picks up one, oh, not that photo album. Why do they not want them to see that album?
Tiny bit of foreshadowing. The wrong album does become a pretty incredibly important plot device later on. And the very next scene is little Vivi feeding the many house cats they have in an odd way where she starts by just putting regular cat food in a bowl and then topping that off with cornflakes and 2 slices of bologna. Third bologna slice she just tosses at the refrigerator for another cat to eat that's on top of there all the time, saying things like, here you go, you eat up, you little monsters.
Yeah, this one bit is a little bit sad for me. As a cat lady, and I have to remember this is just a show, this is not real, these cats are not being mistreated, which reminds me of something from earlier. Beginning to see where they start with the raccoon. There was some discussion in production that apparently hiring a raccoon is expensive.
Very serious emails saying along the lines of like, how important is the raccoon? Because the raccoon is not cheap.
Yeah.
Would you be okay with a possum?
Yeah. We're like, it has to be a raccoon. End of
Artist's
story.
vision is raccoon.
They had to wait until the raccoon was ready to perform.
The next scene is Lil Vivi answering the door for more harassment, in quotes, from 2 policemen. And she says, what's wrong with it now? Is it the septic tank? Well, your septic tank is overflowing and we can smell that a mile out, but that's not why we're here. The cops are there to ask this time about the disappearance of Anthony, their previous grocery boy, who is missing and was last seen delivering groceries to their residence 2 weeks ago, and they deny any knowledge of his whereabouts.
There's an argument that comes between the Vivs.
Do you know I could have gotten married? I could have gotten married. But every boy I brought home, mother didn't like.
Not this again.
Lubomir, you remember him? He was a check count.
He was destitute.
He was a check count. He played violin. He was very sweet. And mother got rid of him in 15 minutes.
And his family was penniless.
He proposed to me from that tree.
Please.
A dog chased him up, but he still proposed. But mother wouldn't allow it.
Very passionate and very real. It's a little moment, but it's a testament to Bill's acting skills.
Possibly both mine and Deej's favorite scene in the entire episode, where little Vivi shows off her dance moves with a miniature American flag, which, along with you got floor all over my lima beans, I think they showed this a lot in IFC promos as they aired this. She's just kind of sidestepping around and waving a flag. I don't think anyone could call that dancing. And then
this is direct from the film. It's probably different choreography, but the costuming, the flag, exactly the same. There's a video on YouTube from IFC where they show the original version and the documentary now version of the dance. And it's eerily accurate. But the things that Bill brings to it, he was still married to Maggie Carey at the time. Maggie made the observation that in the original documentary, little Edie is constantly sort of checking herself in the reflection of the camera, always being very aware of how she looked. But there's one point where he's describing
Finger wag, side step, side.
there's a reason that's been shown and used a lot, because it's just not mocking the original. It's putting their own little extra comedic twist on the actual happenings. Another peak scene for this first episode.
And how do you follow such a peak scene? Or the only way that Bill thought he could top that, the scene that directly follows this, where little Vivi explains how she was almost a chorus girl, but was deemed too tall and too talkative to be one. She said she would, during the shows that she danced in, she would shout out things like, "Don't trust him," and "This is slow, rewrite." She was always demanding rewrites until the director shushed her. I know we both got very specific, very personal things to say about this scene, and I'm going to let Deej go first.
You never quite know what's real and not real of Little Viv. Not much different from the original documentary. It would make sense that she would try to stand out, but just no one else was actually having it. Chorus girls are just background. They're not the main characters.
Yeah, the line, "This is slow, rewrite," that has stayed with me in the decade plus that I saw it. There's a very specific reason why. First of all, is Bill's funniest line of this whole show for me. Secondly, it was in that moment I had just forgotten and had to remind myself that I was watching a man in drag playing a woman and not an actual woman. We've said this before, I'll say it again. It is a testament to Bill's character work and how he plays a role and melds into his parts. It also made me notice the difference in how Bill disappears into his part and how Fred disappears into his part. What I boiled it down to was Bill is doing Kids in the Hall drag and Fred is doing Monty Python drag, because when the Monty Python guys played drag roles, they were mostly playing just very screechy old ladies with house coats. It was like the entire joke was a man dressed as an old lady. And sometimes they went for more than that. Kids in the Hall drag, those guys played very well thought out and well realized characters and made very specific choices that gave their drag roles a much more lived-in, multi-dimensional feel. And, you know, Fred had some good lines that Seth wrote for him, but he's not doing the heavy lifting so much as Bill is. He's more just wearing a wig, reciting his lines in a screechier voice than usual. That moment right there and my reaction to it just summed up Bill's entire approach to acting to me.
They were concerned for developing this episode that would people get upset that we didn't hire women to play the women. But the whole point of, at least at the time, genesis of the series, how they picked the documentaries that they cover is documentaries that had two good roles that Fred and Bill could play. He did drag in the Skeleton Twins, one great pitch of him where he has one half makeup with one half female, one half male. We also know that he's a big fan of RuPaul's Drag Race.
I think that is the icon for your Blue Sky account, where I thought it was, but looking at it more closely, I see that that's just... After that, we get treated to a scene of Barry, the grocery boy, just spraying Little Viv all over with bug spray. We see like a brief frame edited in like Fight Club style that may just give away the ending. And then a possum crawls down the stairs. Little Vivi tells us that she came home from her life in New York to take care of Big Vivi after her knee exploded when she tore her MCL chasing a squirrel that she thought was trying to take her sandwich. Little Vivi says she could have married a Czech count who plays a violin, but Big Vivi says both he and his entire family were destitute.
Because there's all these men in Little Viv's life that was very much like the relationship between Little Edie and Big Edie in Grey Gardens. Her mother became dependent on the daughter and just wanted to find ways to keep her there. Things will take a much different turn with the reasons behind that later on.
It's Act 3, and the cops are staked out right across the street. The Fine brothers, who we hear definitely, if not see for the first time, are having a tense whisper argument amongst themselves as to whether or not they should leave. But then little Vivi tries to distract them with more, I believe, art and photos of Big Vivi, and that's when they get into the lost singing career of Big Vivi as she sings Pitter Patter into a fishbowl filled with gin and tonic on ice, which is another great visual moment.
Just this big freaking fishbowl.
And then little Vivi says, "Oh, I made a record of Big Vivi singing, but father wouldn't pay to have it pressed. Instead, he hauled off and chucked it on the roof, where they had to wait until the snow melted in the spring to go up there and retrieve the only copy." As little Viv tries in vain to squirt ketchup onto a Ritz cracker from like an old cafeteria red squeeze bottle, little Vivi explains that Barry is now missing.
Yes, well, all of a sudden, Barry goes from being, oh, we couldn't live without Barry, I love Barry, he's great, to, oh, we didn't like him anyways, he was never that great. The conversation before with the Fine brothers, one of them is getting very uncomfortable. The other still thinks there's something here to the story and wants to stay. So they're starting to have their doubts and misgivings about, do we want to continue this? But no, we're getting too much good material. It's getting too good. We have to go on. And the song Pitter Patter, oh my God, that is a trip. This is where begins our section of spoilers.
The Fine brothers take the forbidden photo album that they weren't supposed to look at. They take it from them to investigate when they think the Vivs are asleep. And inside this album, they find newspaper clippings of the mysterious disappearances of little Viv's suitors, the check count, Stephen St. Regis, and Anthony, along with scratched out photos of each one. Little Vivi wakes up and tries to bring them down to the basement where, while Little Vivi's just digging out some other portrait, telling a story to distract them about how she came in a year late to a meeting with star-making agent Saul Fields. While she tells this story, the Fine Bros, they open up a forbidden locked door and they find Barry chained up. So at that point, little Viv tells the Fine brothers they're not supposed to be in there, and they try for a quick escape only to run into Big Vivi, who captures Larry. Alfred tries to make his escape only to run into a bathroom with a tub filled with snakes, then runs into the bedroom where he discovers their plot to kill them both, and he sees a gravedigger out in the yard waving at them like a Stephen King shining groundskeeper.
That was the gardener that they showed briefly earlier.
Comes out to find Larry has met his sad fate, has been disemboweled, and now he is about to meet his own.
They corner him into a room, and the last thing you see is little Vivi pouncing on him. And this is where they put their excellent spin on things. I just watched it a few moments ago again, and it is, because we know Bill is a big fan of horror. This was very darkly hilarious, but still pretty fucking scary. Especially when you get to the scene, Fred on the floor with his guts hanging out, and how creepy Bill is as little Viv. It's absolutely chilling how just very blasé and exact that she is about the whole thing. And then Fred mentioning that they shouldn't have been looking through the book. That last jump scare just gives me chills thinking about it.
And then the episode ends on this title card: the Fine brothers were never seen again. The film you just watched was discovered at an estate sale for the deceased Vivi Van Kimpton. Investigators searched the house but could find no evidence of foul play. I love how suddenly and seamlessly they blended Grey Gardens in with like Blair Witch, Paranormal Activity style found footage horror, and just hit you square in the face with a type of logical conclusion that would have come to them immediately and naturally without having to give it much thought. Like, I could see Bill's film nerd and horror nerd brain kicking in.
Our spoiler section has now concluded.
While watching this and thinking, oh shit, there's so many like unintentional horror movie tropes. It's crazy. We gotta just do a horror movie version of this. All in all, a great way to start this to start off both Bill and Fred's first post-SNL collaboration with a left-field bit of absurd, dark comic brilliance.
We know that Bill does have the dark side, and this displays that in full force. We can't discount Seth's writing, which is absolutely brilliant. Bill says that, say that some kids, if they see Sandy Patches first, and then they watch the original.
What happened, man? It's just about existential crisis. It's just about the shallowness of celebrity, dude. What the hell?
Absolutely brilliant. I've watched it so many times. There's so many things I love about the documentary now. This not only being his first big post-SNL project before Barry happened. Even John Mulaney does a lot of writing in this. Reese and Alex, absolutely brilliant. Alex's cinematography and the directing from Reese definitely shows how well they relate with the creative force that is Bill, Fred, and Seth. It's a great start to an absolutely wonderful series. Like, The Skeleton Twins for me is a comfort movie. This is kind of one of my comfort TV shows. With the exception of the one in season 3 for Company where we're actually watching the original, keep meaning to watch the original documentaries, but then I'd end up not. In one way, this is also a indication of how Bill takes his approach to doing Barry, whereas with Barry, he packs so much into a half-hour episode where they can take these big documentaries, with the exception, there's 2 ones that were done in 2 parts, just boil it down to that 1/2 hour, and even putting their own twist on it is absolute brilliance, in my humble opinion.
Okay, and that's our episode. Next week, we're going to go back to season 33 of SNL. We'll be reviewing the Seth Rogen and Spoon episode, which, looking back at the rundown of that one, Bill was in that a lot more than I remembered, so that'll be a fun one to review. Another episode from that season I remember liking, but we'll have to see how it holds up. And I'll be posting a review of that to my blog on the day it comes out. And yeah, that's going to be our next episode, and how we're going along with this.
Great to be into our second year. Thank you very much for tuning in. Well, I'm Dees Behrens, and will continue to be.
And I will still be Casey Killingsworth until I'm informed otherwise.
And as we do, and more people should do, we heart Hater.
We heart Hater. It's what we do.
Thank you for listening to We Heart Hater. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating and review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. We Heart Hater is a presentation of Wacky Notion Productions. Created by Dees Behrens. Hosted by Dees Behrens and Casey Killingsworth. Recording and editing by Dees Behrens. Intro and outro music by Music Unlimited, used under Creative Commons license, courtesy of pixabay.com.